My kids, that's for sure.
Are you playing the role of Gino tonight, or is he coming?
I saw him. Okay, Pat, are we on? Oh, very good. Well, good evening and welcome to the Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting of November 21st. I understand we're taping, we're not live tonight, which is no doubt a big disappointment for some folks who put us into their Thursday night schedule, so I apologize for that. David, if you could read the agenda, please, for us?
Sure. At 6 o'clock, starting with vote to approve or amend agenda, add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. And then we'll have public comment period, and then the town planner, Gino Carlucci, and John Higley, chair of the planning board. And then 6:45, public hearing, the consideration of vote for 2 permanent stop signs at the intersection of Woodland and Mill Streets. And then a request from the Sherborn Inn for extension on holiday service hours for New Year's Eve. Then at 7:15, administrative reports from town officials. And we'll talk briefly about appointments, and then do a few appointments. And then at 7:30, preliminary notice of intent status, and some planning, budget planning discussion. And then anything from the reports from the selectmen, and then consideration of consent agenda with selectmen minutes and approval of warrants and setting the next meeting. And times are estimates only, and items may be taken out of order.
Great, thanks a lot, David. Do I have anybody have any amendments to the agenda?
No.
Motion to approve
Motion to approve the
is read.
agenda.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Great, so that opens us up for public comment, if any. And I think we have a quiet crowd, not a big crowd this evening. So we might just go early on your agenda. And even though some folks might tune in at 6:15, even on the tape, to hear specifically what you're talking about, you could give us a little lead-in and chit-chat. And it's great that you're here. Really appreciate that you're here. John Higley, Chair of the Planning Board, elected and voted for by so many in town, and we're very proud of that fact.
Thank
I
you.
voted for you.
So did I.
That,
And I'll do it again if you run again, I promise.
I got 50% of the votes in my own household. Well,
You
thank
gotta vote for yourself the next time, John.
Yeah. But I am excited about this part because we get to hear a lot of good things that you've got going.
Oh, I think it's in there.
And, you know, it's good that groups like us occasionally interact.
Yeah.
So that's terrific.
Yeah, thank you. And that's well said. It's great. Thanks for the invitation, and it's very timely. And Gino Carlucci, our town planner, has just joined me, and so we'd like to sort of kind of review where we are, and then talk a little bit about where we're going.
Excellent.
The planning board, but the planning board, our job is to look at development and sort of the land stuff. That's very important, and we've been looking at approval not required subdivision things, but we also are really looking at the master plan. So the big picture kind of stuff, I think, is our job at the planning board is to update the master plan, and that's really what I want to talk about. We have a master plan. It's 2001. It's called the general plan, and it's a very good document. Our goal is to revise it or update it. It's 2001. Really ought to be done every 10 years or so. So that's what we've been working on. We started that process by developing a draft town center report that's on the planning board webpage, and we begin that by reviewing past studies and plans and surveys and summarizing them, so it's quite useful. And from that, we focused on what can be done in the town center. Last year, the EA zone was changed, was amended in the center of town. 2 North Main project went through the process of preliminary site plan review. that was passed at town meeting. The planning board reviewed and approved that. It went to town meeting, and the zoning change was approved at town meeting. So that's an example of something that's at the center of town that is really part of our focus on the town center, because it's a smart growth type of thing for the town that includes improving the EA housing area, which is recommended in this plan. It's also in the center of town. The EA zone by definition has to be within a mile. So that project fits, and it's a great example of something that we're interested in. What we did before that project, we created two scenarios of what might happen in the town center to improve sort of the aesthetics and the services and tax revenue opportunity for development in town. One scenario was without water and sewer, the way things are now, and another scenario was with water and sewer. And they're hypotheticals. We're not developers, so we just created two scenarios. But that's the type of thing that we looked at. I guess from that work that's been done, we decided that really the next big thing was to, I should back up. We also proposed the PUD change, which did not pass at town meeting. And the idea there is that the PUD, or planned unit development, was a way to allow some expansion of sort of the perimeter of the town center, effectively, with a great deal of extra control and a great deal of extra control that we don't have in this business general area. So we thought that was a great idea, but it didn't pass. And I think really it didn't pass because the visioning of what that change would do wasn't clear. And the master plan really should be defining what our goals are, what's our environment, what path are we on, and are we doing the things that will go in that direction. So I think that told us we really need to go back and look at a new survey. So in this general plan, it references a 1998 survey in the 2001. The results are in this plan. So what we've done is we've recreated that, or we're going to do a new survey, and I think you have a draft example of that. Yep. And that survey, we tried to make it as similar as possible to the old one, but still updated. The advantage of keeping it the same is that we can compare answers. But we've made some changes, and we've actually made some changes since you got that draft. But that survey will go out with the town census in January. It'll go to every household. Another big thing we just finished is it'll also be available online. So that does two things. One, it goes to every household, everyone. The second thing is it'll be available online so that if a person prefers to take it online, it's the same questionnaire, it's the same survey, and we'll tabulate the results. Our neighbors Dover did something very similar to this 2 years ago. So we're excited because that does two things. One is if there's two registered voters in the town, then they can both respond instead of just one piece of paper, one paper per household. So we welcome that. The more responses we get, the more registered voters, that'd be great.
What percentage did you get in Dover, Gino?
I don't remember the exact percentage. It was pretty high because, again, it wasn't mailed with the census, but it was mailed to every household. I believe it was on the order of 20–30%. But the interesting thing, and I hope we have a slightly better experience here, is it was just done the same way with the option to answer online. But it was overwhelmingly answered on paper than online, which made it difficult to compile and analyze the results. it's easier if, you know, it can be done automatically when it's already online. But, so I would encourage anybody who answers to do the online version.
Can I vote early and vote often, or do you have means to prevent people from doing a paper and an online version? Or are we on the honor system?
We're on the honor system. It takes time to do this, so
Yeah, okay.
realistically, the experience is that that doesn't happen enough to make
Yeah,
any
no,
difference.
yeah, don't worry. Okay.
But the other thing is, this is the first time we're doing online.
Yeah,
And so if we get a small turnout online, I'm okay with that. If we get a lot, that's great. But really, I'm thinking of the long term. 15 to 30 years from now, where do we want to be? But part of where we want to be is make it real easy for people to weigh in, or to put their opinion down or state their opinion. When we have it, this doesn't have to be every 10 years. It doesn't have to be so broad. This is a very broad survey. If we develop an online capability over years, over time,
Yep.
when we have one or two key issues, we can use that survey capability for people to have some weigh in and have some input. It's another form of interaction that I think is a long-term trend developing this. You know, technology is changing.
yeah.
You know, as a long-term trend, having paper and online now, maybe more and more online in the future, I think that'll be a useful tool going forward.
It's a very thoughtful, complete survey. It's well done.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Thank you. There's a lot of people have worked real hard on it, and
And kudos to the previous planning board. A lot of this is taken from the work of the planning board, I think, when you were on it, Mike.
This is a much better planning board today.
What's a better planning board?
There's no question in my mind. No,
Hey, John, a question for you about the PUD, which you mentioned before, and just, you know, my impression is one of the things people were concerned about with that article is the potential for a chain-type store to come in and
Right.
change the character of town. Have you thought about a formula retail bylaw to get at that issue?
Of
So a formula retail bylaw is a bylaw that would say, it would
Yeah.
zone it for retail that doesn't have more than, you know, X number of facilities in Massachusetts. So you'd
right.
be getting, you know, maybe a local supermarket, but you wouldn't be getting a chain drugstore, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah,
Well, what
we did not in that.
Okay.
What we
because
discovered
of-
about those kinds of bylaws, Michael, is that you have to constitutionally allow some place for it to be. It's like adult entertainment. You
Yeah,
have
but
to
I don't
have-
think that's an issue. If you have it on a PUD basis, I think that's not gonna be an
Maybe you're
issue.
right, but you have to have, you can't say there won't be a Dunkin' Donuts in town because it's a franchise.
The good thing
You
is we
have to
already have a
say-
Dunkin' Donuts and a Walgreens, so we're clearly not excluding franchise
Right.
stores. This would be specific to a PUD zone. It's just a way to get over that issue, potentially.
We did not, so that's
Okay.
good, thank you. That's,
So just an idea.
yeah,
Take another
I have
shot
thought
at it?
about it in the past, because when I became familiar with that concept about adopting it, but have not pursued it so far, but it's a good idea.
Just given what I think was, you know, a lot of people's heads about that PUD change.
yeah, I guess what I said earlier, I think it's also just difficult to envision, and a project like 2 North Main was very easy to envision. There was a specific project in front of us to look at, as opposed to, hey, we could do this, but it's not clear what we'd get. With form-based codes, another method of zoning, you can sort of define where things should be relative to the street and things like that. That type of zoning is something that we've also thought about that's maybe something. But I think all of these things really are easiest for our town to evaluate based on, hey, this is where we are today, this is where we want to be. So is this idea, whether it's form-based codes or whatever, or PUD change, or an overlay over the whole business district or something, is that going to steer us in the direction we want to go? And I think the first job is to be clear on what that vision is. And so I think the survey is moving us in that direction. Updating this, I'm sort of jumping ahead, but the way this excellent general plan was written, it's broken into sections. each section was developed by a working group. So in this case, it's a lot easier. All we're doing is updating this, because this work has been done.
Is that on the town's website right now? Do you know?
I think
Yes,
so.
it should be, right?
Yeah.
Actually, it is,
How easy
except
it is to find.
the attachments or the reference, the reference documents are not.
Okay.
So it's, all the
good
the general
stuff
plan
is-
itself
Yeah,
is online,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
But the basic parts of it, so I mention this because one of the obstacles we have to our goals is we need to recruit working groups
Yeah,
to tackle each one. So the basic parts are goals and policy statement, that's one group. Land use, town center, housing, circulation, public facilities and services, economic development, open space, recreation, natural and cultural resources, and then the last one's implementation. So those are the parts. What I think we want to add in addition to those parts, and they don't have to be. This could be like open space, recreation, natural and cultural resources could be 3 working groups. That's not. But this is the organization. I think it's good. It's quite easy to revise it or update it based on that. But I think what's lacking is a financial description of what's our financial environment. That's not. That's something that's referenced. It's talked about, but it's not. I think particularly in our environment today, I think that deserves a lot more attention than it got here. So that could be a separate one. The other thing I think is more of a regional impact. Again, it's referenced here a lot, but we've got global and regional issues. Global warming needs to be discussed. The impact of technology needs to be discussed. That's part of the update, but I think it can be a separate category for the environment around us. The urbanization is a big deal right now. There's a growth of the cities, growth in communities that are connected to the cities, like on a major public transportation area with larger downtown centers. There's a growth to a lifestyle that's more walkable rather than getting in your car to go do your grocery shopping. In Sherborn, we're not going to have, we're not going to drastically change that everybody's all of a sudden going to walk to the town center. We're too far from our centers. But developing, but that's going on around us. And what the 2001 plan does, and I think what says on our town website is that Sherborn is an oasis. We've got great schools, we've got this great oasis, and we, the town, need to make some decisions about how to, if those are the key features and others that we want to maintain, how's this world around us changing going to impact that? Traffic is an easy one to say, traffic's going to get worse. Maybe with this urbanization to some of the communities around us, maybe that actually will mitigate some of it. If 5 or 10 years from now, more people are working closer to home in this area, I don't know. But that's the stuff I think that goes into where we want to be and what we want to do between now and 15 to 30 years out. So I'm quite excited about the project of doing this. The town center, the draft town center report is a step in that direction. But this is the big job, and I think the survey's really going to be a major step in sort of launching that. Things that are underway right now, the smart sewer project is nearing completion. They've just got they've resolved some things. This is a project where we looked at a specific sewer technology for the town center, to be localized for the town center, it's been funded with Charles River Watershed Association, with MAPC. It's been funded to get this study done, and we have a task force that has gone through the process of looking at it. They're making some changes, I think, to finish the financial analysis and present a report. So you should see that from that working group this year. I don't, maybe January 29th, but this year is expected. Let's see, what did I want to tell you about? I guess, I think, well, and Mike, this gets to the PUD discussion also, I think. But I think a few years ago, we had a charrette where we said, let's look at a specific area, a specific few buildings. And there was a wonderful, really nice illustration of what it might look like if it was changed. And I think it was really easy for people to sort of look at that as an example. And that type of modeling tool for maybe the whole town center or a region is something I think would really help us enormously in trying to say, if we're on this path, this is what it could look like if we did do some changes, like a PUD change, for example, or other changes. If we had municipal utilities in the center of town, water and sewer, or just one of those, what could the impact look like? That visioning tool, I think, is something we don't have, and we try with blocks and if anybody's ever seen my drawings, we really lack good tools. But that's something that I think is an obstacle to our success.
When you say that, John, what do you mean by good tools? You're talking about technology, or you're just talking about skill sets, or?
I think both. I think I haven't seen. Well, Ginny, you were at a conference where there was a proposal for a tool for illustrating what buildings could look like, much like that charrette. Really nicely done, but that charrette illustration was very expensive.
Sure.
And wouldn't it be nice if it was a lot cheaper? So the architectural type of software and things that exist, it's getting cheaper and cheaper. If it was accessible for us, or a grant that would get us to that, to be able to.
I know there are architecture and planning programs that are always looking for, real life projects to work on, and I can talk with Gino offline, but there may be some opportunities there. We did that 15 years ago or so with a group from MIT, I think, Gino, that did some study, but it wasn't a design study per se. But I mean, maybe there's an opportunity to feed into something like that. That's
the type of stuff I think would really help us a lot. Again, the town's got to make some decisions over time, and if we have those tools to envision it, I think the decisions get a lot easier, or a lot easier for people to grasp. So I guess things that are on our plate, or we've contemplated. One is stormwater. The regs need to be updated. There's a draft, and that's just a task.
And that's the local regs you're talking about? Our regs have to be updated to conform with state and
Yeah.
whatnot regs? Yeah.
So we've already funded.
Yeah.
We've already funded this, so it's just a task. It's more of for us, from the planning board point of view, it's our role is it's administrative.
Yeah.
Almost similar in a way that I want to say floodplain. The Sudbury watershed map is being updated. This is like out of flood concern. It affects people with flood insurance. So as administratively, our job is when that new map is available, then we need to update our reference to it so that flood insurance can apply. For us, this is just the Sudbury watershed, so it's just, for us, it's just the very north of town.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a few homes that are potentially impacted, but it's a task. Things we've looked at, one is medical marijuana. That's a topic. We've looked at it. The planning board's discussed this and debated it. I don't want to review the whole thing, but it looks like it's not going to impact Sherborn. The likelihood that of the 5 potential sites in this county, correct? This county is not going to pick Sherborn. Gina did go to a conference about it, and we did talk about some options. One is we take no action, and if an application was made, we deal with it. The other is we could proactively identify some site, but we haven't done that, and that's where it's not clear that we don't have an industrial site or anything like that in town. So if we wanted to identify some site, we'd have to go through that process and pick it. We have not. So at this point, we anticipate taking no action. The casino impact, we talked about that. That's been talked about. For Sherborn, the Milford has turned it down, as you know, and so it's very, very unlikely that's going to come back anytime soon. Certainly not in this year. So there appears to be no reason for us to take any action relative to that because it's not going to happen in Milford this year. Another thing that's on our discussion is a site plan review for certain accessory buildings. And what we're really talking about here is lighting. So there's a type of building now that's a barn that uses a translucent material as a covering because it's a great energy saver. It allows light to get into an otherwise dark building. You don't have to light it so much. On the other hand, the downside is when it's used at night, the lights that do exist inside glow. And it's come up a couple of times. And if that happens to be close to a residential home, or to a home, that can be disconcerting or inconvenient. So we have already existing in our special permit language lighting language that basically says lighting should be directed towards the property, not towards an abutter.
Close to the Sherborn end.
That's right. And so we think there's a potential for a warrant article either this year or next, but we're going to make at least a placeholder for it this year to sort of anticipate that this might be coming up in the future. So let's get this in place.
Is that an issue that other places have dealt with, these glowing buildings with the translucent material? Is there a model for how to address that?
You know, I sent that very question on the planner's listserv, which usually is a fantastic resource for things like that, and I got one response that said, check the dark sky guidelines.
But it's different than most of the dark sky stuff,
Exactly.
Huh.
So I haven't found anybody that's addressed it.
Discovered a new planning issue.
Yeah.
People who live in glass houses shouldn't leave the lights on.
Pretty much. It is. Yeah, it's really a lighting issue. So I think it's pretty straightforward too, because we already have the language in the special permit. In the special permit, we already say, hey, if you're going to do this, you need to be considerate of your neighbors. So why not expand that? I think that's. Gino, am I forgetting something? I think that's what's on our.
I think that covers it.
Oh,
I had a
go ahead.
couple issues.
Go for it, Paul. Yeah.
Do you
Well, go ahead, that's fine.
You talked about tools, and that reminded me of the GIS mapping
Right.
issue, and I wonder where we are on that. That was originally going to be combined with our stormwater NPDES permit, and that got put off, and the feds have been pushing that off and off. Where are we on that? Is Dave or Gina?
We have, it's been installed, people have been trained, people are using it. I know CM&D is using it. I don't know if you have any specific piece that you're using on it. Assessors have been using it. So the system's in place, it's just learning how to interface with it right now.
And is it available for the public at all?
Yeah, I think you can access it, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll have
I
to-
wasn't sure that the public portion was available yet. It should be shortly, but I didn't, last I knew, I don't know, maybe
I'll have
it
to
is now.
verify it because I don't know if what I was looking at was a demo or not. So, yeah.
And that should be a major step forward in terms of planning tools over where we were 10 years ago with the older master plan. Now we actually have some technological tools that allow us to do a lot of things.
And the great thing about that is it's not just mapping, but it's tied to the assessor's database, it's tied to other databases, and we can add information to it as we go along, so it is fantastic, yeah.
The other thing I would mention is in the master plan process, you have the survey, which is good, and I'm happy with it. I'll probably answer the same way I answered 10 years ago, but it is comprehensive. But your reference to the prior plan's depiction of Sherborn as an oasis has struck a chord with me, because that has always been part of Sherborn's identity. And then going on to say that we may have to make changes and the town has to make decisions and all of that. While all that is true, what I want to bring up and kind of emphasize is the need for considerable public input later than the survey. It's great to have the survey, but if you get to the point where the oasis may become less of an oasis for whatever reason, we really need to engage in a more old-fashioned way of meetings and putting things on stand-up boards and get people talking about that. And so I hope that in this plan, after it's written and before we consider it done, that you factor in a great deal of public input, public education, so that we all get on the same page. One of the problems I see in other towns is sometimes people do these plans and they end up on the shelf because the community's not invested in it. And the way you get the community invested in it is not just to do a survey, but to educate them on why it's good to steer in a certain direction and what we're trying to accomplish. And if you get buy-in to the overall goal, then making change happen works.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If I suggested the survey is the basis for the master plan rewrite, I apologize. I mentioned that I read off that list of the categories that are in the master plan. Each one is a working group made up of citizens, hopefully, with different perspectives on the same subject. But that process was really a 3-year process to develop this originally, with a lot of different people. And actually, those people are referenced in the working group. For instance, land use had about 12 people in that working group. That's just so each group hopefully will be that of like size. And that's just that process. But you're also talking about the education to the whole town. And I agree. I mean, right now we've got some great aerial photos on a stand down in the hall of the town building that Dave Sorter gave us to show sort of differences at different times of Sherborn. That's the type of thing that needs to go on, and not everybody in town goes through the town hall. Also, the master plan doesn't require a vote by the town at town meeting, but it did.
But we'd like to.
Yeah.
Also, again, there was good reason. I can explain at length if you want. I won't now. But that's part of the buy-in. No, I'm concerned when you mention a committee. I mean, we had a committee to look at revenue, for example, and they went out and they did their work and they came up with this idea of this Pulte development and selling Woodhaven and so on. And committees come up with great ideas and they work hard, but just having the idea doesn't necessarily mean the community wants to go that direction. And in the case of selling Woodhaven, that just the discussion alone provoked all kinds of reaction of people, and why are you discussing this? What I'm trying, again, to emphasize is that a committee writing a chapter is a good place to start, and there may be a lot of good ideas in there. But there needs to be this process by which you get a little bit further away from it, 10,000 feet looking down, and how does all the chapters fit in together, and how does the community really want to go forward? So I'm hoping that there will be not just a vote at town meeting, but a chance. I think one of the master plan processes, maybe the one before that, we had these focus groups. So that might have been back 10 years before that. We had focus groups. But at some point, people at meetings talking, I think would be a good thing to fit into this timeline.
Yeah, those were all public meetings, and they were attended by people, and they functioned a lot like focus groups also. I would assume you're going to have a similar process here. If you really want to get people to show up, tell them you're going to talk about taking trees down, and talk about whatever it is you really want to talk about, but you'll get a room full of people.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Trees.
You good, Paul?
Paul,
Yeah, so that's, oh, go ahead.
well,
No.
Paul, thank you. That's, say it again. I mean, that's just, the planning board's job is to facilitate and shepherd this process. The master plan ought to be written by the town and as many people as possible. So I agree completely.
So here I am, a selectman for a year and a half, and I've been on advisory a number of years, and I don't know how we use the master plan.
Exactly.
So
I think
there's a
someone
key
said, put it on a shelf.
Yeah, so we don't, so as an example of that, put on a shelf, I brought a visual aid. I found that, this is in the selectman's desk, and I pulled it out and I put it aside thinking I'll look at it. Of course, I haven't looked at it in any great detail, but there's a ton of work by the Open Space and, committee that we appoint. And, it's just one element of what you've described, and I'm sure it's captured
And that's an
in there.
update of the one that was 10 years before that.
Yeah, but the point is, here's all this great work, and hopefully
Including a survey.
you're successful, in this effort of recruiting people to do these subcommittees or subgroups,
Right.
and then incorporating that, just as these gentlemen have been saying, so that you've got the town feedback, but we're educating at the same time. And then maybe it's to use so that how we guide from a broader perspective where the town goes, not only planning or zoning, but also at this, how folks at this table
Right.
move forward, will be great. So I think it's terrific. There's work done out there. I think a group from Northeastern came in and did the traffic redesign and so forth. So hopefully you've got some access to, you're looking at that and
Yeah.
incorporating that. The other thing is talking about the PUD. When not in specifics, but more the lack of its passing at town meeting more than once, with different folks
Right.
presenting it. So the question is, my sense is, whenever the planning board comes forward with some zoning changes, it gets near unanimous support of advisory. It gets unanimous support of the selectmen. You guys present at the town meeting, and then some element of something important like that doesn't make it. So how, we have to work to help you move something forward if you think it's important to move it forward.
Yeah.
And of course, that's marketing, educate, all that kind of stuff, that, and not on town floor, town meeting floor.
Right.
It's probably not the place to wind up doing it for most folks.
Yeah, I think the marketing is communication.
Yeah.
And it's what Paul just described, it's that. And I think that takes a huge amount of work by more than just the planning board,
Yeah.
because this is the town's master plan. So it needs to be engaged as an activity by all the boards and committees, but other people in town, interest groups, just.
But that
Different
particular change, which was brought up a couple of times, it's just a change to the PUD, it's a change to a a size requirement in the
Right.
PUD. But that size requirement was created and imposed initially because of the concern that I expressed earlier, and I think people have long memories and they understand that that's why it's in there. So to overcome that, if that's really important, I agree with you, John, there needs to be some plan, some actual plan, somebody who wants to come in and do something particular, which can be explained to the town and shown why it's a
Right.
better thing than what you could build under the existing bylaw, and then maybe you have a chance of getting over that hurdle, but it's not, it didn't get in there by accident, and I think that's what you were dealing with, was
Right.
trying to overcome
Yeah,
that presumption without an actual example.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Can I just make a comment about the use of the plan when it's done? Over the years, both, I was a former planning board member myself, before Mike was on the board, I think, or maybe we overlapped.
Though I held the Durensis seat, that's what they called it.
The one with the splinters in it?
Yeah.
And since I've been on the planning board, I like to hear when a zoning proposal's at the town meeting, is this consistent with the plan
yeah.
Yeah.
or not?
Yeah.
And I think I have heard that, and even in the discussion of the PUD, I think I heard you or someone say that the PUD was consistent with the plan, and I've heard other people, in connection with other articles, refer to the
Yeah.
plan. And that's what the plan should be used for. If we reached a consensus as a community on a certain goal, we should hear, the voters should hear at town meeting, is a particular proposal consistent with the plan or not? That's an important part of the consideration.
Yeah, there is state legislation proposed now that would require the master plan to be updated every 10 years and require that we conform to the recommendations, so that if the plan says we should be doing this in zoning, we better be doing that, or we need to make some changes. So that's a proposal, hasn't passed.
Massachusetts is one of the few states that doesn't have a conformity or consistency requirement between planning and zoning, but it's still it's a powerful defense if somebody challenges your zoning, to be able to say it was adopted consistent with the plan. It's
Right.
not an absolute defense, but
Yeah.
it plays into the discussion.
Yeah,
But it's good planning.
yeah.
Just plain good planning.
Yeah. One last thing, I guess, the process of updating the plan is communication. The process itself is, as you're saying, referencing it, just the process of doing it is also engaging and communicating and involving, making people aware of it.
Right.
So we're sort of overdue to update it.
Kind of a mundane question, but are you going to be able to do that in-house? Is Gino and the board going to be able to do it, or are you going to be looking for outside help on that?
Well, let me put it this way, I don't think it's unanimous, the opinion, but we're revising, so I think we should be able to. Having said that, though, it may well be that a group could say, hey, this traffic issue is not clear, we need outside resources, like that Northeastern study,
Yeah,
for instance. It may well be that the working group on that particular subject says, this is over my head, we need
Yep.
outside
All right.
help.
Well, before I get struck by lightning, because we have a public hearing at a particular time, I just want to thank you for your time, all the work you're doing, and also any help or assistance, any assistance we can provide in your efforts to recruit folks for the subgroups or to spread the word, come back to the microphones and TVs and all that. We're there for you. It's great
Great.
work. Really appreciate it.
we need that
You're
help.
making us smarter, and smarter in where we're going. You're looking to the future. We're up here, we're making the donuts, signing off on pieces of paper, but you're looking out years ahead. That's a very good thing.
We have the lucky.
It's too bad it's you, but I mean, it's,
Gino, are you
John,
still doing that little update with a little squibs about planning thoughts and issues? Are you still doing that? That'd be a great thing to get broader circulation on.
Yeah.
Does it just go to planning board members typically, or?
It's available, but you're asking, your question, it proves the point, it's not being.
Well, I know I've seen it, but it's not something I'm following regularly, but it would be a great thing to get a bigger play for, because it does help people start to think about some of these issues, and you've always got current information and good perspectives on things that people could really learn from.
Yeah, every once in a while I fall away from it, but lately I've posted a couple of items and,
There's a link on our
Hope to-
website.
It's on the planning
It's on-
board's website?
It's on the
Yeah.
planning board webpage called Sherborn Happenings.
Great.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks for the
fantastic.
plug.
That's great, excellent, thank you again.
Thank you.
Gents, really appreciate it. Okay, we'll move along next to our public hearing part of the agenda, and David, I think if you could read what we had for the press, as well as any other
Yep.
technical stuff we need to worry about here.
Right, notice of public hearing, Town of Sherborn, Sherborn Board of Selectmen, November 21st, 2013, at 6:45 PM. The Sherborn Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing regarding the approval of the installation of 2 stop signs at the intersections of Woodland and Mill Street. The hearing will take place on Thursday, November 21st, 2013, at 6:45 PM at the Sherborn Town Hall, room 204A. If you have questions or comments regarding this hearing, please email David Williams, Town Administrator, at dwilliams@sherbornma.org. And we verified the actual citation that required the selectmen to take a vote on this. So that's why, that's the purpose of the hearing, is to vote and approve the Traffic Safety Committee's recommendation to install the 2 additional stop signs at the intersection for the purpose of traffic calming and safety.
Okay, right. Terrific. So, do we have to do anything particular, like vote to open the public hearing or anything like that?
Well, yeah, you should, but you should have a presentation. I mean, I see already hands up in the audience, but before you take public comment, there should be something to comment on. So someone needs to actually present the
Okay.
proposal.
Well,
Is it Brad or Dave or?
David, David or Brad, since he's traffic safe, David, could you just point out the intersection on our little map and tell us what we're doing, or
Or maybe,
could you do it for us?
No, I can find it. I would like to have Brad also talk about the
What
the
we're
vote
doing?
at the traffic safety
Yes.
meeting, or someone from
Yeah,
traffic
yeah.
safety. At the, when they took that original vote to approve the 2 signs.
See if our chief can.
So let's hope the roads are on that map.
Start at the bottom and work it.
Thank you, Elliot.
They're not labeled.
so just tell us what the proposal is.
It's above the triangle.
So everybody can understand it when they see the tape.
South Central.
It's above that triangle.
How many Sherburne,
Maybe we should call the planning board back in to tell us where.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know that intersection well.
Gotta find Sherman first.
That's it.
3 houses north of Mike Giamo's house.
It's the tip of that triangle, right
Right
where
north-
Deerfield comes out.
Northeast
Right
corner.
there. Yep.
okay, so we had a stop sign there before, and one part of that intersection, and we've added 2 more on a test basis, and the purpose here is to explain what we're trying to do with the 2 stop signs and allow for public comment. Would that be a fair way to describe it?
Yes, explain why should there be 2 more stop signs there?
Where is the present stop sign?
Bigger problem.
Can I have you at the microphone,
Sure.
gents? You came to speak, didn't you, Brad? Thank you for coming. It's good to see you.
The bigger problem is all of Woodland. Basically, lower part of Woodland is where the road necks down. It's a downhill slide from west to east, and traffic just tends to pick up speed as it hits the lower part of Woodland. There have been numerous complaints about the speed on Upper Woodland as well, right at the corner of Woodland and Mill. And that sort of mile stretch of road heading toward Route 16. So it's really a bigger job of trying to mitigate the speed of traffic on all of Woodland, but predominantly the lower section. And we, as a committee, and pretty much it came to the unanimous conclusion that one of the biggest, probably the biggest contributor to that speed problem down at the lower part of Woodland is the intersection of Woodland and Mill, because of some very, very soft radii. The intersection is not square. It allows for traffic to basically make those turns at pretty high rates of speed. So the idea was to neck the intersection down, bring in a traffic engineer and properly survey it and have an engineer tell us what the best thing would be to do. But short of having a complete redesign of the intersection, use stop signs, because that's kind of the way we do it in town. We start with things that can be removed, test and verify them, and if they work, we make them permanent, and if they don't, then we don't do them. And putting the 2 stop signs in was pretty roundly accepted as a good first step.
So we have an all-stop intersection, is that, there's a particular term for it?
Three-way stop.
Three-way stop.
stop.
So we had a stop sign as you were coming from the west, heading east, down Woodland, as you came down the hill, where it intersected with Mill. There was an existing stop sign.
Right.
So now we've added a stop sign on a test basis to the end of Mill Street, and we've added a stop sign where Woodland, is it Woodland or West Goulding? It's Woodland, coming
Goulding Street.
from east to west, intersects with Mill just above Deerfield.
Right.
Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, that's.
Elliot, I thought
perfect.
you were gonna correct
Okay.
Mr. Crusoe. It's Goulding
Yes.
Street.
Goulding Street West,
West.
right, Elliot?
Yeah.
I was close enough for horseshoes. I was close enough for government work.
Someone at the table saved me. That's,
Okay.
So to add to.
So I understand.
to what
Brad and
explained,
Brian, Chair of the Traffic Safety.
We also put up our signboard announcing to persons that utilize that intersection that there was going to be a change to the intersection for approximately 2 weeks, Ed. We put up some temporary cones, and ultimately, the stop signs were installed. During this entire process, the police department has been sending police vehicles up there to monitor and do some enforcement, more education and enforcement, because it is a new intersection. And we continue to monitor the intersection, make certain that people understand that the stop signs are there.
So is there any sense of the change in traffic patterns?
Mhm.
Reduction in speeding, presumably?
Well, I'll let you.
It may be anecdotal, but
Well,
whatever
numbers.
indication you have.
It's kind of a difficult question to answer, Peter, frankly, because we didn't do any data
Before,
collection
yeah.
before or after.
Yeah.
The data collecting that we did had more to do with speeding and what times the speeding was most likely to occur.
Yeah.
That way we could deploy our personnel up there to do some traffic enforcement based on the concerns that were shared by the Woodland Street residents to the Traffic Safety Committee. So I don't even know how you would even quantify, whether or not it's having a great impact or not.
Well, have you had complaints or accolades about the, putting at you guys at this table?
We've had equal,
Equal.
would you say?
I-
You would
I-
say more pluses than minuses?
We've definitely got more pluses, I'll say that.
And David, did you get any emails, or any?
I did not get one email, but I had 2 or 3 stop in. One was, actually 2 complained about it, and one of those 2 came back and said he changed his mind.
Drew his
after
complaint.
That's right.
That's because we gave him a ticket and told him.
Yeah.
I think somebody did pass along an email from somebody from out of town who said
Right.
they cut through and they were very.
Right, that was a non-resident that
Yeah.
had posted something.
And I mean, I use that intersection every day, and I think it's great. And it just anecdotally, what it does is it creates a full stop at the end of Mill, which this morning when I was there a school bus had come through. There happened to be 6 cars stopped at the stop sign, not because they were stuck because of the school bus, but because it took that long for them to move through the intersection, which means they're not speeding that next stretch. And as Brad described, if they're headed down Woodland, they don't already have a head of steam when they get going down that downhill.
Yeah, anything we can do legally to keep people from picking up speed on Woodland going downhill toward Route 16 is a good thing. And it seems as though, I said even pluses and minuses because I got mostly the minuses.
They're asking you to lean forward so they can
Oh,
hear
do I
you.
have to?
I
Oh,
guess.
Can I ask a question? For us to adopt a stop sign, we need in the record the basis to establish that the public convenience and necessity are served by this. And from what I've heard you say, the public convenience and necessity is served by this stop sign because it improves safety.
Yes.
It improves, you agree that it improves
Yes,
safety?
unanimously, according to the Traffic Safety Committee.
And to your point earlier, Paul, about including people in community meetings and committee meetings, the Traffic Safety Committee had at least 3 meetings that were attended by, 20 to maybe even 30 Woodland Street residents that shared concern about the traffic issues there. So I would say strongly that the residents in that area, were very supportive of this initiative.
Okay, that provides me enough basis. So at some point you should get public.
Okay,
comment.
so I'll take public comment. I see Elliot, you've got your hand raised. Yes, sir.
I've spoken to 3 of our state representatives over the past 30 years, saying Massachusetts does not have a all-way stop law. And Doug started when he was a representative. He says, make one up, and we'll present it to the committee. I says, you're kidding. He says, do it. I did it. I went to the committee. The proposal that was put in front of the committee was not my proposal. And so I gave my little spiel, and they paid as much attention to me as you guys probably will.
Oh, stop.
It was a real kick in the shins when some idiot from Mass Highway got up and says, we have a 4-way stop law, we don't need one. So 70% of Massachusetts motorists have no idea what all-way stop means. Every other state in this great nation, every kid in school from the time he's allowed out of the house knows what 4-way stop means. I'll tell you what 4-way stop means. You come up to an intersection, it's a 4-way stop or all-way stop. You stop at the stop line. Massachusetts, you don't have to stop at the stop line. This idiot, stupid state, you have to stop before you enter the intersection. Every other state, you stop at the stop line. The one who stops at the stop line first has the right to the intersection. If 2 cars stop at the same time, the car on the right has the right to the intersection. If 4 cars get there at the same time and they all stop, then you kind of look at each other and smile, and you wave someone through, and he becomes the car on the right, and you all live happily. But not in this idiot state. You don't even have to stop at the stop line. And at an all-way stop intersection, that tells you who has the right of way, the one who stops first. Not in Massachusetts. So we don't have a 4-way stop law to tell motorists. 70% of Massachusetts motorists don't have any idea what it means. They just kind of stop, and I guess so. And the other 20 or so percent that do know learned somewhere else when they lived in another state that has stop laws that make sense. Now, here at Woodland and Mill, it's very blind. And this is the beauty of an all-way stop. If it's blind, all you have to do is be able to see that other stop line. So you come up and you stop, say, look, Matt, nobody around. Okay, bingo, go. If someone else pulls in, okay, who's on the right? And as I've just explained, that's how they work. So until this idiot, stupid, backward state gets an all-way stop line and 4-way stop law passed, here we are, parking at the moon with our all-way stops. We have here in Sherborn 2 intersections that has a stop sign, a yield sign, and a no sign. Now, what kind of stupid, idiot, imbecilic thing is that?
All right, Elliot, but can I take it, Elliot, that you're?
Just a minute.
All right,
and I'll
because
sit
we're here
down.
to decide on this one intersection.
I am all in favor of
That's
this
helpful to
being an
know.
all-way stop,
Great.
and we should have quite a few other all-way
We'll
stops.
get to those as we go along, I
Uh,
suspect.
And so, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I can officially retire. Elliot has approved of a design that we've worked on, so thank you, Elliot.
Thank you, Elliot.
No, but we learned something, and he's in favor of this intersection, the way it's being handled with these stop signs. That's very good to know.
can't let
Do
you-
you want public comment?
We can't let you retire.
Yeah, I have Ed in the back of the room, then Chuck, I'll get to you.
For the record, Elliot, I did try to get a three-way stop sign from the sign company. They're no longer printing in Mass. It is an all-way, and that was my only option. But as a side note also, by us installing these two stop signs and not spending the money on the engineering and construction, we've saved approximately $10,000. Installing the two stop signs is a cost of $225 plus labor. So it is a considerable cost savings.
So do we
One
think
quick
that's
point.
gonna, excuse me, do we think that this, what we would approve at town meeting, though, is still on the table, as far as I know?
Yes.
This
Still
is
on
not
the
taken
table,
up.
but what we're doing is we're redirecting some of those funds to
Honors.
address a number of the other resident concerns, mainly a truck exclusion, other issues in speeding, and how we can reduce that, with the engineer.
Also,
Eventually, that intersection probably needs to be necked down some
We looked at necking it down and we did
redesigned.
cone it off for a period of time, and what we found was you can do that, but the stop signs serve the purpose, and it still gives me an area to pile up snow in the wintertime, and it still gives that odd truck that does come through the area to manipulate.
To make the turn and whatnot, yeah.
And as Elliot astutely
Yeah, I mean,
pointed out,
the part of it I'm thinking of, Ed, is the stop line that's about 100 feet in front of the stop sign at the triangle coming, the one that's always been there. It's just not a very effective stop because there's no land there to hold the stop sign where the stop line is, and there really should be.
At Goulding Street?
Goulding
No.
Spring.
Mill,
That's-
Mill and Woodland.
Oh, okay.
Going eastbound.
The
Going
original
eastbound on
stop
Woodland.
Okay.
That's the one area that we would, if I was gonna do anything there, I would bring that curb line out a little bit. You can get the stop sign more in direct line with the vehicles coming down Woodland.
And that'll help you going the other way because anybody going left is gonna have to make a real left turn and not just swing through the intersection.
And again, as Elliot astutely pointed out too, it is very blind if you're on Woodland looking down, which would be south on Mill. But all three stop signs are clearly visible when you're at that intersection.
Agreed, yeah, okay.
I have seen a
Mr.
thing
Col-
from,
oh, I had Chuck, and then Mr. Colon.
I was gonna point something out about the warrant, since the chief and I.
Oh, okay,
The engineering was for both intersections and the entire area.
yeah.
So he mentioned redirecting. It's not like we're redirecting to Western Ave. We're just consolidating,
Different
Some of the
focus
engineering
than maybe
efforts.
originally. You're focusing
but
less on this
still within the
intersection.
scope of the original.
Understood.
And Ed actually met with the engineer this morning. I don't know if you wanted him to speak to that or not.
Say that again?
Ed met with the engineer this morning at that intersection. I don't know if you wanted him to.
He seemed pretty happy with the two stop signs, and he was in complete agreement with that the stop signs addressed all the safety issues.
Oh, okay.
He agreed with the not spending the construction money and the engineering money to neck it down further because the stop signs accomplish everything that he wanted. He is looking at the intersection of Goulding West and Woodland, and his preliminary assessment is probably going to be the elimination of that island, telephone pole, the whole thing, and tee that intersection off more.
Yeah.
But he is going to be
'Cause that's-
surveying it, doing the traffic study, and then getting back to us.
What do you say about the tree?
Uh-oh.
Brad? Well, let's not go there. Chuck, yes, I had Chuck and then Elliot again.
I wanted to agree completely with that. Kudos to the Traffic Safety Committee. This is a simple, low-cost solution.
That's right.
And those of us that have driven that intersection for years, this makes sense. And talk about traffic calming, putting in some stop signs is low
Kinda
cost.
works, doesn't it?
And very traffic calming. And I commend it for consideration for other streets.
Okay.
Nothing like a stop sign. So kudos to the committee. Great common sense solution.
Elliot, yes, sir.
150 feet back from your stop sign, you'll put up another sign always stop 200 feet or whatever feet. So people who come up to this intersection know what they're coming up to,
Well,
and
I
they
think-
can start looking around
We do.
to see whether they're the first car
Yeah.
or not.
Those have been erected,
They have
actually.
that.
Elliot.
That's there.
You have that, right, Ed? At all three? And I have it in one coming
On the two.
when you're heading, okay, and the two. The two on Woodland.
You probably should have one on Mill Street.
Maybe got three of them, 3 signs, 3 ahead.
Yeah. All right, is there
We need
anybody
one on
here
Mill
from
because it
Woodland
has a straight
or
view of the
besides
stop sign.
Mike from Mill? Ah, you're a-
You want input?
love it. We have to make decisions up here, you know, and the more input, the better.
My input is that the stop sign from Mill to Woodland is effective. That I think doing something is, Ed described to, and Mike, as you brought up, to make the eastbound stop sign on Woodland, the eastbound stop sign
More effective in
more
some way.
effective, I think
Yeah.
would be helpful.
Yeah.
The other thing is, when it first went in, I saw several cars go right through going
Yeah,
westbound,
yes.
because they weren't used to
I did
seeing
that.
it,
I did that.
even with the cones and everything else. So,
Yeah, we have you on video, but don't.
I know, but I was using my
So,
wife's
but the
car.
point is that always stop warning sign is helpful for that. That always stop sign
Yeah.
is one key piece of that
Advance
puzzle.
notice, you need to have those, yeah.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
There will be those instances where it takes time for people to get used to it.
It's a revenue opportunity, right?
I'm ready to move the question.
No,
All right,
Mr.
good.
Russo, it's not a revenue
Okay, you
generator.
got any more there?
Well, yeah, just a question. There was a statement that the engineer looked at it and he approved it. Do we have that in writing?
No,
Is he willing to put that in writing?
I could ask him.
He didn't design it, though.
He was just offering an
That's the
opinion.
thing.
Doesn't matter, as long as he thinks it's,
If he'll say it, that's great.
he said it verbally. And he's like,
Promises, promises.
professional. It's always, it's good insurance. The other thing is that sometimes we have a long pavement. I've seen stop signs that are hung in different locations. All stop signs do not have to be on a post at the curb. They can actually, I saw them strung overhead and hanging like a traffic light. Sometimes you have traffic.
The way the law reads is the initial stop sign has to be on the right side. If you add an additional one, your next stop sign has to be on the left, and then you can do one up and across. But your first initial stop sign has to be on the right.
Right, but the point everybody's making here is that that is 150 feet from the intersection, and people aren't, there isn't a stop sign where you're supposed to stop. That's the problem that was raised here before. All I'm saying is that there are different configurations. If that was an issue, I'm not saying it is, it just was an issue that
Are you
people,
talking about a stop bar?
no, there is a pavement mark.
Where are you
Stop.
talking about,
He's
Paul?
talking about the original one that was already there.
The original one that was already there, several people made the
I believe
point
the way the
that,
state law reads is if you've got a stop bar and a stop sign, you're supposed to stop at whatever's closest to you first, the stop sign or the stop bar, and then proceed. So if you have a stop bar before the stop sign, you were to stop at the stop bar first, then proceed to the stop sign to move. Or if the stop sign's ahead of the stop bar, you stop at the stop sign and then proceed to the stop bar.
If I'm not mistaken, you installed the line, what you're calling the bar, recently on that sign, or at least you repainted
We
it?
just did a repaint.
Yeah, because, and that fixes the problem to some extent, because what you had to do before was stop at that stop sign where you couldn't see whether anybody was coming from the right, and then go past the stop sign until you could see what was coming. Now you at least can stop and then stop at the line and know you're at a safe location. So, but I would be ready to
Yeah,
move approval of this.
Any
we
more
gotta
discussion?
first close the hearing.
I'd be ready to move closing the hearing.
Anybody else want to say anything?
Good.
All right, so I'll second the motion to close. the
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Great, we'll close the hearing. Now let's take a vote. Take a motion to approve the
Motion to approve the
Two
traffic
s-
safety committee's plan for 2 stop signs
Two
at the
additional
intersection,
stop
2 additional stop signs at the intersection of Mill and Woodland Street.
As configured in the,
Well, as proposed in the Traffic Safety Committee's recommendation, and as experimented with or temporarily installed by the police department and the traffic, the CM&D department.
second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? Great. Now we have to have I think we scheduled this Sherborn Inn as a public hearing item, is that correct?
No,
No? Okay,
just making a request.
just making a
Are they here?
request. So we have a request from the Sherborn Inn to extend their normal service hours, which I don't know what they are, to be able to serve until 1:30 a.m. They'll have last call at 12:45.
I think 1 o'clock, I think.
1 o'clock, so it's an additional half hour, is that what we're talking about? And this is for New Year's Eve only,
Only for that one night.
one night.
The usual service, the license allows them to serve until 1, is that right?
That's
I
my,
had the same question. I haven't found out yet.
Do we have a license? A copy of their license?
we should, that should be in the.
Thanks, Brad.
Well, we do, but
Thank you.
Thank you.
it's probably in Jeannie's files.
They
Can
don't have to,
we hold this first?
Let's postpone this. Can
I'd
we
like
postpone
to,
it?
yeah, I'd like to at least see the license, if not hear from the people who are asking for the extension of the hours. It's a little strange to do that in isolation.
Well, I would say that we have historically allowed people to enjoy New Year's Eve and to actually drink past the time
Midnight.
when the ball drops and to have a good time. You know, part of life is enjoying life. And this we've done for many years running, so it's not a new or novel request.
Have a comment from Elliot before we do anything here.
Yeah, in the last 2 or 3 years, this has come up, and I haven't had any objection to this one night. However, the Sherborn Inn is shining bright lights on my house. It's against the law. I've asked them in other meetings, don't shine your lights on my house. The lights shine on. You don't believe me? Take a peek as you drive by tonight on your way home, and you'll see what I'm going through. These goddamn lights shining on
Okay,
my
Elliot.
house. Also, there's been 2 parties there where they've had outdoor entertainment, which is against the law. And until the Sherborn Inn stops shining lights on my house, and I get an assurance there'll be no outdoor parties at the Sherborn Inn, I will be opposed to any licenses, any special permits, or anything for the Sherborn Inn. They do not respect my rights as a neighbor across the street, and if that's the way they're gonna act and treat me, then I, as an abutter, 100 feet away, am opposed to any permits for the Sherborn Inn.
Okay, thanks for your input, Elliot. So you just assume
I'd like to know
delay, we
what the
can afford to
existing,
delay.
I'd like to
so
know
we
what the
have more
existing
information.
license is if we're gonna extend it, yeah.
Yeah, next meeting.
That's me.
I mean, I don't have any
We have plenty
No.
of time.
conceptual
Yeah, I think- yeah.
opposition to it. I just wanna know what they're allowed to do now. And I know there are neighbors who have concerns
So we'll
potentially.
table that. You're okay with that, Paul, tabling it? I think
There's
we'll
a
get to the right outcome.
130 seat limit, too.
Okay, great. So now we're on to the next section here, David, of committee appointments and so forth.
Yep.
And you've given us some good information in the packet here to,
yeah, I think I listed the seats that are considered to be filled, seats that are vacant, and a few other things we need to work on at a future meeting.
yep,
The first one we were looking at was Employee Health Insurance Advisory Committee.
yep.
And we had this in front of you before, and I think there was, you wanted to see the whole committee, not just the
Right,
seats that we were considering at that time.
right.
So now you can see the final membership would be 1 union elected position from CM&D, 1 union elected position from the Police Officers Union, and 1 union position from
teachers maybe?
Yeah, the teachers' union. The other four, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to ask you, you have Karen Jewell expiring 2016 on the list, but expiring 2015 on the text up top. Do you know which that is?
It would be the list, I mean, it'd be the 2016 because that's actually copied out of my spreadsheet.
Okay. So.
So you're looking for us, David, to do what's highlighted plus Karen Jewell, is that correct? Or didn't we already do
Yes.
some of these? Did we do?
No, we didn't do any of
Okay,
it.
But David, if Karen's a 2-year term, it can't expire 6/15/16. So does it expire 6/15/15 with a 2-year term, or is it a 3-year term?
Be a 3-year term, 6/15/16.
But I thought we were only moving the ones in the shaded,
The ones,
and Karen Jewell isn't in the shade.
she's shaded.
She should be
She's in
shaded.
that group. She hasn't been
shaded
appointed.
in
No, she's not shaded, but I'm saying she's in that group to be
Right,
okay.
appointed.
So we're here to appoint 5 folks.
I'm to
as
consider
recommended.
her in
Yeah.
the shade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Made in the
Can I
shade.
make the motion then? Or
Please.
I move that we appoint the following: Ruth Hohenshaw for a term expiring June 2014. Bridget Graziano for a term expiring June 15, 2015. Jeannie Guthrie for a term expiring June 15, 2016. Lucy L. Mason for a term expiring June 15, 2016. And Karen Jewell for a term expiring June 15, 2016.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Terrific.
Now, that's up to full strength?
Yes.
Excellent. Good group there.
The next one is Disability Advisory Committee. And
It would be an honor and a privilege to nominate Paul Leach, who has served on the Disability Advisory Committee already,
right, that's
But-
just extending.
to give him a fresh appointment for a term of 3 years expiring June 15, 2016.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Great. So then we've got these next two, David, and the question is whether they're already, all those folks are already in force.
These are not, they're not new appointments. They would be reappointing the existing people for another term of 1 year.
Versus just letting them carry forward until we did something different, until and if we did something different.
In effect, if you didn't do anything, they would continue to roll forward as they are, and
So
you wouldn't have any.
We've had tentative discussions before about the Western Avenue intersection committee, but is there still a justification for that committee as a separate committee from traffic safety? I was a little concerned with how this whole redesign played out. Over the past year, there was a lot of town money spent and for, not many results. I'm not sure it was the best handled, although I know people had good intentions. I wonder if having a more uniform or consolidated approach to these traffic safety issues might be a better idea than having an ad hoc committee on Western Avenue.
Yeah, I think that's something that should be talked about.
Was that a town meeting developed committee, or was that an appointment from the Board of
It
Selectmen?
was an appointment from the Board of Selectmen.
So I would propose we not reappoint and that we at a later time discuss whether that committee is going to continue.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
My 2 cents is that on that committee, or any committee, before you sunset a committee, I've learned the hard way, you need to bring them in and ask them,
It's exactly what we want to do.
what are their plans?
Yeah, I don't
Do they
think
have-
Mike's suggesting sunsetting them at
Right.
this stage. I think it's just a no-action type of a consideration, which rolls into the second part of your recommendations in terms of talking about the second page here.
Right, that's going to be a lengthy.
The lengthy thing that you're gonna have, we have an NOI going in on that, right?
Right.
So I think that's where rather than us doing appointments also for the Wildlife Management Committee, because they're in force, they'll continue in force. until we decide to do
Right.
something different.
And that's when
And that
we're
bundles
waiting
in the
for a
same thing.
report from them. So there's actually a product that they are gonna pull together, and to have them continue in effect is until that report at least is produced, is probably not a bad, or recommendation, whatever it's gonna be.
Yeah, but just in terms of this broader public safety group that we've been kicking around, and we're gonna have an NOI and see whether that will move forward, and this would be one group that may be bundled in or somehow.
Right.
Maybe, although this one seems to have some particular expertise concerning wildlife and animals
Yeah.
that gets beyond the traffic and policing type
Right,
expertise we
right.
need on the other committees.
Right.
But I would mention that the Western Avenue Committee has got some stellar people in it, long-serving town
No question.
volunteers of tremendous standing.
Well, the other thing is, and it's a little unclear, there is this second intersection on Western Ave and Brook, I think it is, right? That still has
That they're working
work to
on.
be done that was approved, and I think it was their warrant article that was brought forward.
I think that's a quick and easy success that can be done at Brook Street for very low cost, so
But they
I'm
need
just not sure why it hasn't.
Well, I just so not take action on either of these two, given that we've got this big public safety committee issue going, maybe,
Around.
to kick around.
Yeah,
And,
I'd-
but allow them to continue doing what they're doing. It's not
I
gonna
just
interfere
wanted
with
to
what
bring
they're
it
doing.
back so that when these people ask what's going on, I
Okay.
can say, it was brought in front of the board, decided to table it, and
Yeah.
your appointments
But they're
continue
still
as
continuing, yeah.
they were before.
I'm more comfortable with that, unless you have a burning desire to do something on,
Some of the people believe that
they
the
don't.
committee, doesn't exist because they haven't
Which
been
committee?
appointed. In Western Ave, I've had questions there,
Oh.
yeah.
No,
Yeah, I
the law
mean-
is that people continue to serve until a successors are
Right,
appointed.
right.
I'd like it when committees have a charge and they can discharge their charge and then disband in a lot of cases, where there's a particular need for it. I think there was a particular need that was served by the Western Avenue Committee. It's been in existence for quite a while. I'm not sure it continues to be needed, but that would be a subject, as Paul suggests, for a more focused meeting on whether that committee needs to continue. Maybe we could schedule that for a later time.
But not just the issue of sunsetting them, but have them bring forward this Brook Street
Yeah.
idea. Because if I recall, that was pretty simple, and we had a discussion, I
They
remember
have a
people from
design.
traffic
No,
safety
they've
that
been
commented
approved,
on
the
it.
funds have been approved for them
The
to.
engineer was in agreement, the abutters were in agreement, it seemed like it was a pretty
But they
generally
also had a
accepted
design for Whitney
idea.
Street. that
Well,
didn't
but that's
quite
the
work
thing. I
out,
mean,
but that-
Maybe we should try and have them try and experiment there with,
Yeah, I mean,
Marking it up.
I just, experiments are good. When we're experimenting with public funds, maybe this isn't the year to have a lot of experiments unless we know they're gonna work.
well, this is a DESA funds that can only be used for this
Still
purpose.
public funds. Well, not just for that intersection. They can be used for a lot
Well,
of things.
yeah, I think what we need is an update, maybe David can check and find out what is going on with the Western Ave and Brook intersection, and a sort of a final synopsis of the Western Whitney, given the results of the efforts to date.
So Mrs. Tyler has some input, I think, on
I'm su-
Brook Street?
I'm sure. Brook Street?
Yeah, the Brook Street intersection is my understanding from what the designs were and what was approved by both the Western Avenue Committee and what they brought forward to
Town
traffic
meeting.
safety. No, as far as after the engineering study and what the suggestions were, but that's already been approved and it's been installed in the signage. The Sherborn signs have already been installed, that's Wagner CMD director. So whatever was suggested to be done at Brook Street has been done.
I'm not sure of that, only because they
No,
did,
No, they wanted the in-pavement, there was a suggestion of putting the in-pavement reflectors, and the CMD director said that no.
I don't believe that,
it's been done.
that the committee's officially moved on and are done with Brook Street, though.
Right, because particular designs were presented to the Board of Selectmen for both those intersections on Western Avenue. And those were the those designs were brought forward to town meeting. Funds were approved to spend to make those changes. And so I just don't know if anything's
I
done
know
with
I-
Brook Street.
Well, you sound like Paul Durensis.
That's not a bad
You
thing.
get all the
That's a
history
good
of all
thing,
this
isn't it?
stuff.
Yeah.
I've talked
I paid
to,
attention
You're
a couple
taking my
meetings.
job.
No, that's all right.
I've talked to Mr. Crashaw about getting moving on and getting a success done at Brook Street, so that
Okay,
we were
so that's
both in
still in
agreement of
play,
that.
that's-
But, so that's why
But
I
for
think
what we're
there's still
trying to
some-
do here, if we just allow them to exist
I mean,
as they have been.
I understand there's ADESA money here, but just to use an example, if we created a Western Avenue subcommittee, and it was the Western Avenue subcommittee that had designed these stop signs, we could do that for every street in town. There's some advantage to having Ed Wagner as our CMD director and a traffic safety committee be the ones who are focused on those, and they can draw input from, as Paul points out, these very knowledgeable volunteers. But to coordinate all these projects townwide and make some judgments about which are most important, which are most worthwhile in terms of bang for the buck, which is public money, it helps to have a single committee and a single department of the town that are working on those instead of have that divided up.
Just to piggyback on that, I think I heard the suggestion, maybe it was from Elliot, that there's 3 or 4 intersections in town that could be improved very quickly and very cheaply with an additional stop sign.
We always start.
And maybe if you'd write those down and share them with traffic safety and so on, if we can install, 3 or 4 more stop signs and
One's Farm and Lake, I can tell you that, that's a mess because of
and
because of how it's
dramatically
divided.
improve public safety. The stop signs are low-cost, fast, efficient means of improving public safety.
Poor man's traffic light.
I think we're all on the same page on that.
Or the
And I
Sherborn
think-
traffic light.
And I think you basically described this public safety committee that,
Yeah.
David's trying to put forward. It makes great sense, and because we just have piecemeal approaches to things, that may not be the best way. Yes, sir, Elliot.
You mentioned Western Avenue Committee. My thought was that they're no longer a town committee. They're just a group of private citizens.
Now, there's a Western Avenue Intersection Committee, which does exist, still is in force. What we're discussing is whether or not we would grant them or appoint them, reappoint them for a one-year term ending 2014. And what we're, I think, deciding is to just continue their existence until we
Thank you.
take on some things here as we go to town meeting, so, and warrant article preparation and so forth. So I think that's where we're at. So, and that's where I'm at on the wildlife management. I think it's part of the same kind of a discussion.
Sure.
They do have work going, and
Mhm.
I know they met just this week, I believe, and that's great, so. And you're in touch with them a little bit in terms of what's going on there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not so much them as I am the Western Ave.
Yeah, okay.
And then we've been advertising all these vacant seats. Have we had,
Very low response. So how about I read through the list again of
Go for it. And it's, I just
vacancies?
noticed it's in the Dover Sherborn Press this week, right? Yeah. Go for it, David.
The vacancies to fill, we have vacancies to fill on the following committees. 1 seat on Cable TV Advisory, 2 seats on Disability Advisory, 1 seat on Elder Housing, 3 seats on the Energy Committee, 1 seat on Farm Pond Advisory Committee, 2 seats on Groundwater Protection Advisory Committee, maybe up to 7 seats on the Open Space Committee, 1 seat on the Personnel Board, 1 seat on Revenue Development Committee, 1 seat on Traffic Safety Committee, and then up to 5 seats on Historical Commission and up to 5 seats on Historic District Commission. So,
Okay. Well,
I wonder, with some of these committees which are rather large, Farm Pond Advisory, for example, and some others which do really good work, but they also eat up volunteer time. And when you have, an 8-person committee of volunteers, and you might have a 6-person committee and get the other 2 volunteers to serve on a historic commission or something else they might be willing to serve on, maybe we ask a lot of our volunteers, as Paul's always pointing out, we have a lot of people who volunteer, but we have an awful lot of committees and a lot of subcommittees and advisory committees with lots of seats, and a limited, pool of time that a lot of people have. I wonder if we should think about some of these committees in that light as well, in terms of size and
That
purpose.
was one of the recommendations of the Collins Center study, was that for a small town, we had an amazing number of committees. Apparently, bigger towns with, 30,000 people have fewer committees. We have,
But we have a real participatory government. Bigger towns with 30,000 people tend to, run things with a much smaller group of people overall because they've got city-type governments or
but not only do we have a problem filling, you could see here 12 or 15 committees, but more seriously, a lot of these committees are doing jobs that supposedly originated with the town administrator or should be with the town administrator and were kind of carved away. And so the idea was to consolidate a lot of these things back into the town administrator. This was the sort of summary of the recommendation.
I don't see these as really fitting that bill, Paul. A lot of these are
Well,
standing committees to advise on things.
The only one was Farm Pond Advisory was basically operating the whole reservation down there until they put forward a plan to hire a reservation manager. And that was approved and was under the town administrator, so we operated it out of our office this summer. It wasn't under the Farm Pond.
And when I was on that committee, I got the impression that a lot of that was meant to insulate the selectmen from having to deal with day-to-day issues down at Farm Pond, as historically they might have done.
Yeah.
Without a committee like that.
Well, but I think your point's well taken. We may have committees where we have 8 people and we only need 5, and what's to prevent us from moving in that direction?
Well, Historic District Commission in particular is a statutory
Yes, I understand that.
requirement where if someone wants to do work in the Historic District in Sherborn, they need a permit from a committee that it apparently
Doesn't
doesn't
exist.
exist anymore. That makes it tough to get that permit. So,
Well, I think by statute, if the committee doesn't exist anymore, it defaults to us.
oh, does it? That's interesting, too.
The buck stops here.
So we better behoove ourselves and
Let's get that committee filled.
committee
Yeah.
up and running.
That's star next to that one.
And the last one is, we have too many people on the agricultural committee?
Yeah, how did we do that?
Does one of them want to be on a historic related committee?
That's right.
They are going to
They're gonna come up with
vote
somebody
to
that's gonna
decide who's going to be going, and we will hit that person up.
You're going to weed one out, is that what you're saying?
They have to thin
That's
their herd.
good. Funny. All right.
But that's the only thing as far as these appointments that we had to
Okay.
do tonight.
Great. So the next part, and we're almost on schedule, we have a preliminary NOI status, part of the budget, part of the agenda, as well
Right.
as further planning discussion. That's not really to deliberate on things, just to get a good sense, and I appreciate this nice summary and,
Right.
Getting a look at these NOIs. Notices of intent for warrant articles, some of which involve money, some of which involve changes to bylaws, zoning laws and bylaws and so forth.
Right.
So it just gives us a good sense of what we're in for, a little heads up. By my math, we've got $1,132,000 of dollar impact of this package that I've seen so far. The biggest item being the request for a fire truck. You're already getting, I gave you some questions, which I know you've already been asking anyway, and the chief's been asking about what, the information that will be helpful for folks to make decisions.
Right.
Pictures will help as well, I'm sure, but,
Right.
David, I had a
good
question.
information.
Sorry,
Go-
Peter.
Go for it.
I had a question on one of these. It was actually not a huge number, but it was the carpet replacement article. And you attached 2 invoices or 2 estimates. One was for the common areas and one was for the selectman office. But the price attached to the NOI only reflected the common areas. Were you suggesting not proceeding with the selectman's office?
Good share for what.
Yeah, okay, so, and so
Right.
then the question is, do we need to attach that,
The other estimate?
the estimate, just because it may mislead some of the folks?
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, my concern was this room and this carpet.
Yeah, those are the ones I think that
That's a
that he's got covered
common
on there.
area.
That's what common areas mean?
Yeah.
The hall.
It was
And
the
the halls,
halls
too.
plus the
This-
meeting room, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's all the kind of detail we will get into when we deliberate on those. So
Right.
part of what I want to do is just kind of discuss briefly the process. So you'll be vetting a lot of these, I presume, right, David?
Well, right now, these are I have a list of 27 potential warrant articles.
Yeah,
I also have approximately 6 more in my back pocket that I expect to come in.
yeah,
And one I heard tonight.
yeah, yeah.
So 10 of those are routine that are done every
Yeah.
town meeting. There are a number of capital items that will probably be thinned out when Selectmen and Capital and Advisory will all
Advisory.
meet together to whittle those down. And, yeah, as,
But wait a minute, what, I don't know about that.
okay,
That may be the right approach. I don't recall that we've necessarily gotten in the same room to talk about that stuff, even until maybe the public hearing in March,
okay.
late March. So
Oh,
we may
okay.
want to do that, but often, what I think is happening right now is advisory and capital budget are meeting with the proponents of capital items.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily include us in the mix.
No.
Maybe we want to, but certainly I think we want representation there, at least through you, for
Right.
example.
Right.
So that you're heads up, particularly if there are items like, coming out of one of the departments, like the fire
Right.
department here.
When I met with Capital and Mary Wolf from Advisory, I basically gave them a list of the 6 or 7 and then told them that probably 3 were real priority and the others could be moved to another year.
But just to talk about how we are gonna evaluate some of these things. So, and included in that also would be the budget items, like you're carrying the ball with the budgets of the Selectmen's office and all, fire and police and all that stuff.
Right.
In a new approach. And so, given that it's a slightly new approach, I guess is the way I describe it.
Right.
The process sounds like it might make sense from what you're suggesting, and I concur, is spread it out over a few meetings where we're touching some budget items, maybe some of these warrant article items, we evaluate them and,
Right.
and, get them all covered, all of which you've done, some preliminary
Right.
vetting on.
So what I was picturing
And then we might avoid the Saturday thing, unless you're
Well, I was
really
going to give
looking
a
forward
little
to
bit of history here. Steal your thunder.
Please go.
Do you want to be on the Historic Commission, Paul?
Yeah.
We have
A
opened
couple
it.
of seats for you. You could bring your wife, and the two of you could participate, yeah.
But we used to have the form in front of us and have the article proponent come in and advise them. At the bottom of the form, there's other boards review, and we advise them what boards we think they should go to and why.
Uh-huh.
So we had sort of an initial intake, if you will. And what I hear you saying is you want to change that to kind of have the town administrator do a lot of that. But we used to have all of these people come in.
Well, that's what I want to have the discussion about how we want to go through it. okay?
anyone who's presenting the warrant development with the capital projects and all these other articles, every one of those should be coming in front of the selectmen, whether it's the person, the proponent bringing it forward or me with a department head.
Yes, yes.
So I would expect all of those to be coming in front of the selectmen at some point.
Okay, that was my concern, because you have down here, most of these are Board of Selectmen.
Right, right. Some of those could be changed to capital budget committee bringing them forward at the end.
No, they don't really bring them forward. They just kind of give it their
Rubber.
blessing and
Okay,
their own write-up, and they, vote on their own
yeah.
support or not.
Well, let me just
So-
consider the first one, just cite it as an example so
Sure.
people know what we're talking about. This first one is a proposed article that would address the fact that we now have a lieutenant in the police department, and it is to consider an employment agreement. And who would be the proponent? So you would be the proponent of that, or would the police department be the proponent of that?
The sponsor, it's between the town and an individual, and you have to sign the contract, so I assume that the Board of Selectmen would be the sponsor because that's where it has to be, and the person that would be carrying it out as far as doing the legwork and making sure that it is implemented would be me,
Yeah.
the town
But
administrator.
I'm not sure, as we discussed briefly before the meeting when I was downstairs in your offices, I don't think town meeting votes employment agreements per se. That's what the Board of Selectmen does.
We have
I
a
think
town
really you're just
council
trying to get the
opinion on that.
clarity for the personnel administration plan is really what this is talking about, isn't it?
That's Article
So-
2. And Article 3 is to amend the bylaw. All these, there's 3 articles.
We have a
for
town council
lieutenant.
opinion on those
I
first
didn't
3
give us this.
articles, saying that
Yeah,
we need
mine
3
was blank.
distinct separate articles.
Yeah, that was in the packet, but.
So when we discuss them, we can flush that out, but
No, I didn't get
All right, but what, I'm trying to focus on policy. I'm just using these as an example. And
I think I got the blank.
the point I'm trying to make is, who is going to be sitting at the table over there saying, we need 3 articles, here's what the 3 articles say, here's what they accomplish, and here's why the Board of Selectmen should put them on the warrant?
Yeah,
Who
no.
physically is going?
Yeah, I think that's a
me,
good question.
I mean, me as the lead department, I'm going to have to carry them out, so I would be giving you the information on that, or coordinating that information and bringing it to you.
So you might have the chief.
I
sitting
might
next
have the
to
chief here, I might have town council here, if, depending on what's going on. But at that time, the request would be to have the Board of Selectmen be sponsoring the article, and the Board of Selectmen would have to vote on whether they would be they have to vote whether they want to include the article on the warrant and vote their sponsorship of the article.
Yeah.
Do they want to sponsor it or?
So again, going back to the question of procedure then, I'm just urging that you and the board have a process in place where every notice of intent at some point comes before the board with a spokesman or a proponent who would explain, not just to us, but to the entire community,
Right.
what is this article?
I'm not suggesting not doing that in terms of the change, or any change to what we do in the NOI. I'm really just saying that the beauty is we have David to do some vetting before, he scrubs some of this effort before it gets to that chair over there and we have to make a decision on it so that people aren't scrambling. Take the fire truck, for example. There'll be details about the fire truck that they're asking for to support their need. That in the past, I've seen, I went on advisory, there was a request for a fire truck, and he'd asked 6 questions, and they can only answer 2 of them. Well,
I noticed
he's
you-
asking, 6 questions, and they'll be ready with the answers, that's all. It's a vetting thing, so I think we'll be more efficient and more educated, and we'll be able to make a decision more comfortably than tabling things for another week or so to have information about
I
that.
just want to.
You're gonna make a,
Share a laugh with, what you wrote down and sent a memo to the town administrator saying, I'd like to know the answers to these
Yeah.
6 questions, whatever they
Yeah.
were. The first was, what's the mileage on the truck? And then I looked, I was thinking, well, that's a good question, I'd like to know the answer. There was no answer to that question.
Well, I don't need that
You're
answer
not
right away.
considering the NOIs right now, these are
we're
preliminary
not-
notices
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
intent.
We're just, this is just to talk
A
the process
checklist.
and have a sense of the heft of what we're gonna be in for.
Right, right.
And what might be controversial or what we
Right.
may have to do homework. So
Right.
I think it's terrific that you've got and this little lead page.
I mean, you could go with
It's
just the checklist and none of the preliminary until everybody submits all their information,
Yeah.
but I don't think that that's what.
No, but
you
I
want.
also think that warrant article proponents have been complying with the need for an NOI, so that
Right,
folks
right.
are doing some good homework to
Right.
begin with to, bring something
Right,
forward.
and they're at least getting a placeholder in
It's a
and
great
saying they're gonna
process,
get
so we're not
more information to
dealing with
us.
stuff in February here.
Right, but,
For the first time.
yeah,
So that's good. So likewise, on the budget, Paul, where we had the all-day Saturday and we were asking a million questions and people would sit there and present their thing. I don't know if we'll still go through all of that. We may go through it for some of the bigger ones, but it'll be the department head with David sitting over there for a number of those types of things. That is the way I would envision it, over a
Right.
few meetings.
right, over
Versus
several, whether you do it in the
Saturday.
workshops or whatever, I mean, it's something to expose you to whatever the budgetary issue is, but the town accountant is sending out, the budget forms that the departments are used to filling out, and those are due at the end of December. So my note within that is telling the departments under the Board of Selectmen that they need to submit their items to me 2 weeks prior to that.
Oh, good.
And then whatever ends up going to the town accountant or the advisory and out to you guys on those final budget forms, I've already,
You vetted it.
yeah, I've already
Yes.
whittled down and
Yeah.
have a package. And then we start bringing them in and talk about the budget issues, if there are any issues, but.
Peter, I mean, and David, I like the idea that you had about not doing it all in one day. I think those days are exhausting, and maybe, maybe we're not gonna be able to be fair to everybody in that kind of a setting, but I would suggest that if we do it the way we're talking about now, that we try to group logically affiliated or related items together, so we have an ability to, within our heads, kind of weigh them one against the other or see how they relate to one
Right.
another. I think that'd be a more efficient and
Yeah.
and probably smarter way to do it if we can.
Yeah, I would see the whole month of December as a workshop at every meeting that is focused on reviewing NOIs with people who are ready and reviewing any budgetary issues that I might have identified at
That you
that
might want to
point.
bring forward.
Because some of the items that people are talking about are items that they would normally build into their budget, and there's just no room to build those things into their budget. If it's compelling enough, then I would bring that forward instead of just eliminating it,
Yeah.
and then get your input on it before.
Yeah, the only practical or logistical challenge with this approach of workshops or over a period, a bunch of nights, is the need for the town accountant to be here, because I know that she is not always available. And on that Saturday, she's there that whole day. Not that she necessarily is an active participant in the process, but to the extent there's a question that only she can answer, it's helpful to have her there. So that's something we'll have to wrestle with. It may be that the question gets tabled if she's not present on a particular night, and it's something none of us can answer,
I just want to reiterate what I think I've said before. Where the town spends its money is not just an accounting issue and not just trying to make things fit within tight confines. It's where we make policy decisions that reflect our vision of where the community needs to move forward. So I don't like to see mechanical budgets where every budget is mechanically adjusted by 1%, period. We want to look at making improvements. Thinking of the listening device in this room here, for example. We decided we were going to do that. We did it. And there's an improvement, and it's permanent, and it goes forward. Well, these are policy judgments, and at the end of the day, all those policy decisions have to be made. If we don't have a very active part in that, then it gets made by others. So at some point, we as the elected officials, the one that, people talk to me all the time about what their visions are, and we get all the complaints when things don't work. And the responsibility at the end of the day ought to be ours. We do have a vision as to where we want the community to go, and I want to have that role here for us.
Yeah, so part of why I wanted to have this little discussion tonight was to probe your comfort level, because that's really what it's going to be, is to ensure we have comfort in whatever, the resources are being devoted towards. And that rolls right into the overall policy and so forth. But the point is that I think we'll find with David's participation, we'll get comfortable more quickly and knowledgeable more quickly. That's really all I'm looking to see come out of that. And then, the lack of a need, I think I'm comfortable without having to do the all-day Saturday thing. I think leaking it in over a few nights, and I think Mike's absolutely right on in terms of talking about if there are trade-offs, we need to be sure we're kind of dealing with them at the same time. I think that's very smart, a very smart approach. So that's really, I just want to probe where you guys were on this, and
And I agree with
I
what
think
Paul
we-
said. I mean, it is policymaking. It's policymaking where you choose to recommend the town's resources be put, and also where you choose to recommend they not be put. And, you know, we've heard from a lot of people, this is a year to tighten belts, and that's a policy judgment as well.
that's great. Okay, so I'm good with this part of the agenda then. Are you comfortable, David? You get a sense of where we're going?
I'm still doing what I was doing.
Yes, that's exactly right. Perfect. Perfect. All right, so then we don't have any minutes. We do have a warrant here. I know this warrant still has the police chief weekly. I think we got to get him.
Yeah, why, I
don't know why that is,
I had
yeah.
flagged that as a question.
Yeah, and we need a CM&D sign off, and you noticed, and I also see we had some scribbling changes to
CM&D.
CM&D hours and so forth, and then looking at it closer, they had a big slug of OT, so I don't know what all
And
is going on. But
why is the fire department still weekly?
they're not weekly, they're just off-cycle, Paul, so,
The on-call.
yeah. They're bi-weekly, but the payroll processing folks have decided that, because they were doing payroll every week, that the fire department would be a good chunk to have on an alternate week.
But then that just completely
So-
No, I mean,
eviscerates what
there's-
we were trying to do about
What,
not having to meet every week.
yeah, so what we have to do, here's what I'm gonna say overall, all right? Is we need to have a good sense of what it will take to get the fire department on cycle with everybody else. And separately, if you could get us a memo, I'd like to see a memo, and it might be confidential, just talking about how to get the other group, union group, onto the bi-weekly thing, and what the issues are, impediments and so forth,
Well,
to
that-
get there.
We've already raised that with the union
Yeah.
to begin talking to them about it, and that's the anchor that's, I mean, if they end up going, then we can everybody there. It's not,
Yeah, so I'm just,
Everybody
I guess I
else
want a
on
better
there.
sense of what,
But
because
that's
some
just-
of us think we can do it. I think you think we should be able to get them to do it.
That's just impact bargaining.
Yeah.
That is,
you just agree.
the law is you have to discuss it with the union, but if you can't reach agreement with the union, as long as you've discussed it with them, you can implement it anyway.
Right,
That's what impact bargaining is.
right.
So I can't imagine why it would be such a hardship for one small group of employees to do something different than everybody else in town. But if there is a hardship, they're
Yeah, I
gonna
mean,
have
we
to
don't wanna
spend
get
an
into
extra,
that
46 cents in postage or something like that. Well, let them say what it is.
But I think that's what we're doing. We've notified them that we want to hear their issues, and then we'll make a decision.
Okay. So we're
I mean-
waiting to hear back before we have more facts from which to make a decision or not make a decision in that regard.
Well, we've asked them officially to come to the table to resolve that issue. So they would come to the table, and we would be at the table, and we would hear I've heard their thoughts outside of,
Yes.
outside of bargaining,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and it needs to be official with their union rep there, and, but that's the only,
Weekly,
yeah, that's the only real holdup in there.
right.
Just so that our listeners understand, what we're talking about is paying everybody the same amount of money that they get paid, but rather to pay them once every 2 weeks instead of every week having to write a check. And that impacts the operation of the town, because, for example, if you've got Thanksgiving week, you still have to go through the whole payroll process. If you have Christmas week, you still have to go through the entire payroll process. And that means that people, staff, volunteers, administration, have got to be there at odd times, like the day before Thanksgiving or a few days before Thanksgiving. It's just a very rigid system, whereas if you go to once every 2 weeks, again, nobody gets less money. This isn't about trying to shortchange anybody. It's just, it's 2 weeks' pay and one check. That's all we're talking about.
Do we have any update on the certification of the?
Yes. She told me that it would be done by the end of November, which would be another week that it would be submitted.
It's more realistic at this point than the old deadline of the end of October.
She's
Yeah,
waiting for the audit work and so forth.
Yeah, the Board of Selectmen policy was 120 days after the close of the fiscal year. I don't, it's a nice goal. I mean, I think that should stay as that, but I'd be real happy if it was done by the end of November. I did go on the websites and I mean, the Department of Revenue and checked other towns. Dover's not certified, Millis isn't certified. We're not behind in any way with the other towns. But some of the larger towns have been certified.
So when she submits that, will she also send us an email that says she's done that and what the number is?
That will show those, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good.
that would be useful. Well, okay, so this warrant has some other health insurance, and I think is some interest payment that's being made for some of our bonds. So it's warrant 21, the amount of it's $291,081.47. I would take a motion to approve it, subject to CM&D director signing it, and a brief explanation of CM&D overtime, because it's a slightly unusual event for them.
So moved.
Second.
All those, any other discussion? All those in favor? Terrific, thank you, gentlemen. So then we're on to what our next meeting is, and that would be in a couple of weeks. We have, we are looking forward to a new taxpayer coming into the world next week, which is gonna be huge and big, and somebody is cool, calm, and collected here, with something coming in the next few days. It could come any day now.
3 days, yeah.
3 days, unbelievable. That's huge, that's exciting.
So next meeting is at the Williams's house?
Yeah, we're gonna go change some diapers.
Yeah, you're gonna bring,
Yeah, that'll be fun.
We could do a proclamation.
Yeah, we can do a proclamation for the
Bring
youngest
some-
firstborn, TA that I've ever worked with, I don't know.
Appointment to the Historic Commission.
Yeah, there you go. That's
bring
great.
some wipies.
Yeah, bring some wipes. All right, so 2 weeks from tonight, we'll have our next meeting, and I forget what we've had on that thought process, but we'll be dealing with workshop, maybe, we'll be dealing with some of these NOIs, we'll be dealing with, I don't know, maybe bringing another committee in just to say, hi, how are you, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
We were
so-
thinking of
12-5, right?
requesting the
Yeah.
rec commission
Oh, the
to
rec
come
commission
in
come in,
in
yeah.
January?
Yes, that would be
Late
good.
January? Okay.
That'd be good.
For planning purposes for the warrant, treasurer's asked, will we be meeting on the 26th? Do we know that at this point?
No, I think we'll do the desktop deal of
Okay.
November you're talking about.
No, I'm sorry, December
Oh,
26th.
of December.
Oh, we won't be
Yeah.
on December 26th.
We'll be down at Mike Giamo's house, right? Have a
We'll be
meeting there.
someplace, we'll all be, I may be at your house, you may be at my house, I don't know. We'll all go to Peter's
No,
house.
yeah, he's welcome, you're welcome anytime, as long as we don't violate the open
Just don't
meeting
talk
law.
about,
Yeah, don't tell
don't
anybody.
talk about anything.
Yeah. But we do have a big warrant to deal with next week, so remind me what, it's not next week, they won't even have it ready next week. So it would be Monday morning, it would be available for
Actually, it'd be
After
Monday
Thanksgiving.
after 3 PM.
after 3 PM.
Okay.
So we'll do the desktop review, we just gotta, you'll be yelling and screaming to make sure we get in to look at the thing.
Right.
Good, that, we can handle that. All right, so do you have anything else for us, David, tonight?
No,
You
I
ready
do
to
not.
go, and you're We're gonna come back with a family of one more. Next time we see you.
On budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. All right, well, I'll take a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thanks again, gentlemen. Nice job. Thanks to the
We're
folks
done,
from
Pat.
planning. Thank you, Pat.